Following the assassination of Charlie Kirk, a lot of people have been trying to capitalize on his death for clicks by saying they knew what Charlie meant about this, they knew what Charlie meant about that. One of the hot button issues has been Israel. Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and their ilk have been saying ridiculous things that contradict everything Charlie has said on video, everything he said on his campus tours, everything he said in his speeches, everything he said on his social media. There was a report recently in the New York Post about one of the last professional meetings, the last professional meeting that Charlie Kirk had before his death. He was meeting with a friend of mine, Rabbi Pesach Wolicki. You might have seen Rabbi Wolicki on Fox News, on Steve Bannon's show, on lots of conservative outlets. I actually met him at a Turning Point convention. He had this last professional meeting with Charlie Kirk before he was assassinated, and he told us what it was about. Interestingly enough, it was about Israel. I saw a news report from the New York Post, and it was about one of the last professional meetings that Charlie Kirk had before he was assassinated. And the person he was talking with was a friend of mine. And it may not be a household name, it may not be somebody you know, but what they were talking about was fascinating. What was going on in the conversation was fascinating. And the reason they were having this meeting was fascinating. And I don't mean to use the word too much, but I was just taken in, and I'm going, this is my friend in the middle of all this. Joining us now on the Warrior Injury Law studio line to discuss Rabbi Pesach Wolicki from Israel 365 Action. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Ari, it's an honor to be with you.
I gotta say, it's an honor to talk to you and an honor to know you because you were one of the last people who spoke to him, but also, and I said this to you before we did the interview, I'm so happy it was you. I've known you for a year and a half, 2 years now, and I know you as such a trustworthy, wonderful individual who advocates for Israel, but advocates for Judeo-Christian values. And that's why you fly in from Israel for Turning Point events all the time. So tell us what you were doing talking with Charlie Kirk the night before he was assassinated.
Well, over the last 6 months or so, I've been in regular contact with Charlie, meaning in a WhatsApp text relationship that was that that began. I mean, I'd met Charlie for the first time back in December of 2023. So we did meet, and we had he came to a Shabbat dinner that we were doing at Turning Point, a small group of people, about a dozen people, and he showed up there.
That's
But
the one I missed. That's the one I'm.
that's the
That's
one
the
you.
one I
That's right.
missed.
That's the one that you missed. That's the one you
Yeah.
missed. So we knew who each other were, but it was really over the last 6 months or so that we were in regular contact because and it really came out of Charlie wanting to have someone who understands his politics, who understands the language of where he's coming from politically, and the world of MAGA and the America First movement, but someone he could trust, and someone who's also in Israel and knows the Israel issues and has access to accurate information because he knows there's a lot of disinformation out there, and he wants to be able to be in touch with someone who because Charlie's number one interest was always the truth, to get to the truth, and so so we were introduced. I mean, we already knew each other, but basically, when he was looking for someone that he could trust, to talk through these things, so we started, a regular WhatsApp relationship, and there were conversations, and I appeared on his show a few times, and it really, over the months, it was a regular texting relationship, and as he was preparing for his campus tour, that Utah was stop number one, was supposed to be stop number one on his campus tour. As he was preparing it, he decided that he wanted to have a meeting with a few people that he trusted to talk through Israel issues, because in those campus visits, unbeknownst to most people, we all see the viral clips that they cut. We don't see the whole event. But Charlie and his people have said to me, they've told me that between 40 and 50% of all the questions he gets on those campuses are attacks on Israel, or meaning attacking him for being pro-Israel. He's in a position of defending Israel. I can't believe I'm talking about him in the past tense. It drove him crazy. He hated it because he wanted to be talking about America. But he found himself defending Israel on a regular basis and going back out to the campuses. He wanted to go over all the hot button issues that have to do with Israel today and talk through them and come up with a position and talking points that he felt comfortable with. So Josh Hammer was on the call. You know Josh.
Sure.
Uh, and I was on the call, and a couple of Charlie's staff, and Charlie, and that was the call. And it was a work call. I mean, it was very much like down to business. Charlie was someone who, always in good spirits, but not a lot of small talk. Let's get to work, we started talking through the issues. But the whole existence of that call, the whole fact that that call happened and that it was initiated by Charlie, that he called that meeting and that he put it on the schedule and wanted to talk through these issues, even with all of his criticisms for Israel. And he's had his criticisms, and yet people are blowing that out of proportion. That he was, he was done with Israel and he was switching sides or whatever. It's all nonsense. If that were the case, why on earth would he set up a call with Josh Hammer and Pesach Wolicki to talk through Israel issues in preparation for being attacked for being too pro-Israel and having to field attacks on Israel and defend Israel on campuses? Why would he do a call like that if he had abandoned Israel? It's the most absurd thing in the world. So, there's all this, this ridiculous chatter going on online. But in the bottom line, when we think about what was lost here with Charlie, here was someone who he was the unifying voice of the MAGA movement. He was the only person who was viewed with legitimacy and respect and even reverence in every part of what makes up MAGA. Because MAGA is really a coalition of a whole bunch of different factions. There's you know what I mean, Ari?
Yeah.
There's like the RFK health libertarians, and there's the evangelicals, and there's the sort of like traditional Catholics, and then there's which also often dovetail with like the isolationists, and then you have like the kind of Daily Wire types, and then you have like the Fox News watchers, and these are all different types. These are all people who live in different, and then there's like the Blaze Media gang. You know what I mean, like, and there's almost different ideologies going on within MAGA. And the only person who could go on TBN and speak to the evangelicals and go on Fox and go on Real America's Voice with the same authority and the same integrity, being able to speak the language of that audience, speaking as a MAGA insider, as someone I've been part of the movement from the beginning, he was the only person who really unified the movement, who could really speak to everybody and was equal, and was respected by everybody. So, I'm not just saying that as a eulogy and as praise of him. I'm saying that with concern that there's a natural fractiousness because there's so many sects that deviate and so many different ideological points that make up MAGA, and Charlie was the unifying force. He was the glue. That's why America Fest was what it was. Where else in our movement could you have an event where Ben Shapiro gives a keynote speech, but so does Tucker Carlson? I mean, that's only Charlie, because Charlie was the glue that kept the movement together in many, many ways. So I feel like I'm rambling here, Ari, but I love. When I'm talking to you, I feel a level of comfort. I appreciated your praise before, that you were saying that you were happy it was me, but you're someone who also, we've only known each other. It's almost 2 years, meaning this December it'll be 2 years since we met.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately I was like, oh, thank God, here's someone I could talk to who understands this, who understands the movement, because you're authentically part of it the way I am, and I've always appreciated you.
Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. I remember right after October 7th, I was actually through back channels because I didn't have the kind of relationship with Charlie that you did, that I was a little concerned about some of the things he was saying. But afterwards, and I wasn't so emotional, when we all calmed down after October 7th, I realized Charlie was looking at a lot of the Israel America stuff through the America First lens. I was looking at it through my family's in Israel, my son's in Israel, my son's joining the IDF. And I was looking at it through that lens, and I was
And
very
just your
emotional.
Jewish national
Right.
identity as a Jew,
Exactly.
right?
But Charlie was looking at it through, okay, here's the facts. There's this country, there's that country, the way I would look at something with Mexico, the way I would look at something with Canada, the way I would look at that. And the fact that he was meeting with you to refine his talking points, I assumed there was a lot of pushback. I assumed there was well, here's what I
Absolutely.
believe, and set me straight and tell me about this.
Well, and you saw what I said what I was quoted as saying in that New York Post article, which is totally accurate. And when that reporter asked me what the mood of the meeting was, and I said it was combative, meaning I wasn't saying that as a kind of like again like a eulogy or praise. I was basically saying that was, he was really grappling with these issues.
Hmm.
And there was and he gets pulled he was getting pulled in different directions, and I understand that. And I just his whole life was about hearing all sides. I know that he's also having meaningful conversations with people who are anti-Israel, and that's fine, and he's going to do that, and that's all part of who Charlie is. He's going to expose himself to everything, and and I was grateful and honored for the fact that he trusted me and included me in his brain trust to talk through, these issues that relate to Israel, because there's also within him a very faithful Bible believing evangelical Christian who, you know, who, you know, who believes fundamentally in the tenets of what we call Christian Zionism, which is a politically sounding term that I don't like to use, but it's just basically a biblical worldview of what's happening historically with the Jewish people, and therefore understanding that, okay, the Jewish people have returned to our homeland, and seeing that as a biblical event. So that's part of that. You can't separate that from his struggles politically, meaning if that wasn't there anchoring him with a positive orientation towards Israel, he probably would have been, I shouldn't say probably, he undoubtedly would have been much further along into the anti-Israel camp, with whom he shared a lot of opinions, and that's where he annoyed people in the Jewish community over the last few months with some of the criticisms he had for Israel. And I argued, I don't know if you saw the piece I wrote in the Jerusalem Post a couple of months ago when he was being attacked after Tucker Carlson spoke at SAS, and people were calling him an anti-Semite. And I know Charlie, and here he's, little do they know, half the time he's on college campuses, all he's doing is hasbara and defending Israel. And he doesn't even want to be. He doesn't even know the issues that well, but he's forced to. But he dutifully, with a smile on his face, defends Israel left and right. We all saw what he did in England. You know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
at the debate, and passionately defending Israel. And that's not even what he wants to be doing. And now he's getting criticized as an anti-Semite. So I wrote that piece in the Jerusalem Post basically saying, listen, everybody, stop with the purity tests for every single view that he has to line up with, I don't know, Bibi's cabinet decisions. Relax. Okay, this is our greatest ally. Yes, he has questions. Yes, he's influenced by the other side as well. Good, I'm talking to him. Thank God he's honest. He's such an honest truth seeker, such a noble, honest truth seeker, and a courageous one. He goes up against people to the right of him. He goes up against people to the left of him. That's he did. And part of that was being open to all different views and getting information wherever he could get it. And part of that, I was honored to be someone who I understand where he's coming from politically and ideologically. MAGA is my political home. It is my political ideology, and I live in Israel, and I'm plugged in, and I understand that what's going on here, and know how to find the truth, and give our side of the story. I understand there's another side to the story that he's going to be hearing, but I was honored to be able to play that role.
I'll say is that something that I've been seeing that's nauseating, that's sickening, that's demonic, to use his language, is the people like Candace Owens who are taking advantage of this opportunity to say the most outrageous things just for clicks online because they know they'll get them, accusing him of awful things, accusing Jews of the most awful things. And one of the other reasons when I saw it was you and Josh Hammer, I was very excited, was that you guys have your presence in MAGA, but you're not some people that are so super well known that people think, oh, the Jews are controlling everything and this is who's
We are
talking
not the
with them.
establishment.
Right. You're really not the establishment.
Not at all.
Just like I'm not the establishment. Some other names people would have been like, oh,
We're
see,
shunned by
see.
we're shunned by the establishment.
If they only knew what
there have
you
been
and I
hit
went
pieces.
through. Right.
There
And
have
the
been
hit pieces
in JTA and the Forward and that left-wing rag Jewish Currents, written about me and written about our organization and written about Josh Hammer. The ADL has criticized Josh Hammer. I mean, we're not. one can't claim that whatever Josh Hammer and I are up to represents the Jewish establishment. We're kind of outlaws.
Yeah. I mean, we should really just have, I should put up in the video right here, I should have articles just popping up as you and I are talking
I mean,
about all the
I'm the
different hit
crazy
pieces.
rabbi who defended Steve Bannon when he, like when he put his
Right.
arm in the air, you
Right.
know.
Right, exactly. So, but here's the thing. I mean, when you see these things Candace is saying and people like her are saying, what's your reaction? Because me, I just want to throw my computer against the wall. I want to throw my phone
Look,
against the wall.
you said it before, it's for clicks, but I want to drill down on that because it's actually worth talking about in the sense that it sounds like cope, right? And to someone just saying, oh, they're just saying, oh, you're just doing it for clicks, like we're sort of bitter. But I challenge anyone to do the following. Because Candace Owens, just so much of her content is anti-Semitic that it would be hard to, it's almost like there's no control group to compare it to see when she posts that something that isn't anti-Semitic. But if you go to someone like Matt Gaetz, who was never anti-Israel really until he just sort of jumped on the anti-Israel bandwagon over like the last 6 months, a complete, I don't know what he was up to, jumping on all that stuff. Him and MTG. If you go take a look at their Twitter feeds and look at their posts where they're posting about any other issue and versus their anti-Israel posts and just look at engagement numbers, okay, on those posts. Just scroll through, go through, let's say 20, 30 posts, and a bunch of them will be about Israel. Look at the engagement numbers. I challenge you. Go take a look, and you will see that it's quite obvious that it is lucrative for them to post anti-Israel content.
This is
And
something
that
that,
is why they do it.
right, this is something I use this analogy all the time. Rabbi, I don't know if you saw the new Superman movie. We're talking with Rabbi Pesach Wolicki. The new Superman movie, there's a scene that I started laughing at because it was right after the bombing of Iran when this movie came out. And what happens is Superman gets a behind the scenes look at Lex Luthor's lair. And he's got a room filled with genetically engineered monkeys that are acting as bots online saying all the awful things about Superman. And I burst out laughing in the theater. I just burst out laughing because I go, "Oh my God, this is literally what's happening right now."
This is
And
literally
and
what's
then I and then here's the funny thing. I come home and people are talking about how the Superman movie is anti-Israel. And I said, "You guys have no idea. This is the most pro-Israel by accident Superman movie there could have ever been made. And you guys just don't understand how true to life it is." So is there
it's
going to be any
unbelievable.
effort to respond to these lunatics, or you just think they're a lost cause and forget it?
Oh, look, speculations about who's getting money and what the motivations are, and look, there's some sort of op that's being run. Here's something. The last time I appeared on Charlie's show, actually, he asked me about. Um, yeah, he asked me. We he asked me to respond to the focus group on Israel that they released. You remember that focus group where they had
Yeah.
a group of student leaders in a room and they talked about Israel, and then TPUSA released a it was more than a highlight reel. It was basically they released footage of the focus group, and he had me on to talk about it. And I pointed out the following: that if you look all around the world and you see um, populist, nationalist, Christian conservatives, political population in Hungary, in the Netherlands, in Italy, in Spain, in Argentina, in Brazil, everywhere they're pro-Israel. Populist, nationalist, Christian conservatives everywhere right now are pro-Israel. The Tommy Robinson people out in England, populist, nationalist, Christian conservatives are pro-Israel everywhere, except in the United States of America. Makes no sense. The hard right, I'm talking about the hard right in all these countries. What happened? I think there's some kind of op being run that is targeting Americans with all sorts of poison about Israel because there's too much at stake. There's and part of the op is to try to separate Christians in America from support for Israel.
I'll tell you, I think you're 100% right. My theory on what's happening is a little different than yours, which is I'm not even necessarily sure it's a new op. I think this is an op that's been running for years. And I think it's something that in this far left progressive ideology that's in all the public schools, and even these Christian right people go to the public schools and on social media. For years, for the last 20 years, there's been an organized effort against America and against Israel and to drive a wedge between. Let's remember Barack Obama was funding anti Israel, anti Bibi stuff using American taxpayer dollars in Israel. This is something that has been going on for a very, very long time. I think we're seeing the fruits of it now. And I think they're activating the youth with the stuff we see on social media. TikTok. I know a lot of people who have left TikTok because it automatically prioritizes all the anti Israel, all the anti American stuff they see. And they go, why do we want to be on this? Because we're not seeing the stuff we want to see. We want to see dancing stuff or garbage, whatever garbage they want to see. And instead, they're seeing this.
Yep.
I think this is just you're seeing the fruits of the last 20 years of what's been going on in high school and college campuses. It's not just college, it's also high school. And I think you're also seeing the full impacts of social media now that we're actually seeing them about the content that's being prioritized, and that somebody has effectively figured out how to use bots to promote whatever content it is, be it anti-American, be it socialism,
You,
be it Antifa, be it anti-Superman,
you know,
whatever it is. Yeah.
Ari, this little rant of yours, it's actually ironically, it's an appropriate topic to be talking about regarding Charlie because, much was made. I don't know if you saw that Prime Minister Netanyahu went on Fox and he was reading from this letter that Charlie had written him.
Yeah.
So I was privy to that letter back when it was delivered to the Prime Minister. I was one of the few people who saw it. Um, and and in that letter, Charlie has a lot of criticisms for how Israel is losing the information war and how Israel needs to message better. And he had practical advice for the state of Israel on how to improve their messaging. I didn't see how much of the letter Prime Minister Netanyahu read on TV. It was a 7-page letter. I can't imagine he read the whole thing. But there's a lot in there about things that Israel needs to change about how Israel tells its story. So he had his criticisms, but at the same time, as he had his criticisms, and everyone in our community, in the pro-Israel community, has kind of been doing a lot of hand wringing about, oh, we're so bad at this, oh, we're so bad at this. Why can't we be better at telling our story? Now, I'm on the front lines of all this, and at the same time as yes, we could do a better job, we're also up against a machine that we really can't compete with. Because the anti-Israel bias that is in the media establishment worldwide, that is in the United Nations, and the weight and authority that their proclamations have for a lot of the people in the world, and what we're up against in terms of Qatar's reach and Islam's reach into Europe, and the political impact that has, and diplomatically in the world, there's a machine here. There's an information warfare machine that we're really outgunned and and it's kind of like if we're totally outgunned and we're losing, yes, we could be doing a better job, but like, you know, uh, we're kind of up against it. And for most Israelis, and here, this is something that Americans need to understand. And I told this to Charlie point blank. By the way, I never pulled any punches. I never tiptoed around him in any way or told him what he wanted to hear. And I think that's part of why I think that's a big part of why he trusted me and wanted me there. And it was the same, by the way, for all the time that I had a relationship with Steve Bannon, where I used to be a regular on a show and we would chat and we would text very regularly on a daily basis almost for a long time. That relationship has been strained of late, ever since the Iran war. Um, but I never pulled any punches. And I said to Charlie, I said, listen, it's true that we're losing the information war, but I want you to understand something. For most Israelis, at the end of the day, the attitude is, look, the world hates us. It would be good if we had them on our side, but we'd rather win the actual war. And, you know, that's more important to us than whether or not we win the information war, because the world hates us anyway, especially in the post-October 7th world. A lot of Jews just sort of don't give a crap anymore. I told that to Charlie, just so that he'd understand where we're coming from. Like, yes, we want to do a better job in the information war, but in the end of the day, if you push any Israeli, they'll say, they're going to hate us anyway. Let's
Yeah.
make sure we win the real war, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. In the last few minutes we have with Rabbi Pesach Wolicki from Israel 365, So your last meeting with Charlie, where'd you guys leave it? Was it okay, here's the talking points he's going out with, or was
Well,
it
yeah,
we're going to keep
so we,
talking?
yeah, meaning, and so, and it was like, and it wasn't about like this is what you should say, which is how it's being portrayed by the, by the conspiracy theorists, like I'm some sort of Mossad handler. It was more like talking through the issues and Charlie asking questions and Charlie then saying, okay, I think I'm going to approach this issue this way, and this is going to be my position on it. And, formulating his positions, which weren't necessarily the positions I would want him to take, even. Meaning he was, let's say his, whether it's his position on U.S. aid to Israel, which I'm opposed to U.S. aid to Israel. I want it to be drawn down, and Prime Minister Netanyahu has said he wants it to also. Charlie would probably have that done more quickly than I would. So I'm not saying that he would just like take my position on everything, but we talked through how to talk about why is Israel actually an American interest? Why is it in America's interest to support Israel? And I don't think he was convinced by some of the arguments that I was making. I was just sort of sharing different approaches to it, but not just approaches that I think or that Israelis think or that the Israeli government thinks, but more like working with Charlie to formulate a position that he'd be comfortable with. Because I understand where he's coming from politically, and I understand the nuances of what's going on in the Middle East and with Israel. So I could help him formulate a position. It's basically sharing my opinions. Charlie is a listener. Charlie was a listener. He wanted to hear all opinions. The open marketplace of ideas was like a core fundamental, more than belief, and it was kind of like his existential core. Was he believed in that? He believed in the open marketplace of ideas, which is why he annoyed people like you and me by platforming Tucker Carlson and whoever else. Because for Charlie, the idea that you're supposed to silence any opinion was anathema. But
Yeah.
that came from a place of truth seeking. Do I think he went too far with it? Well, yes, we often, for all of us, our best traits we often have to a fault. You
Right.
know, he was,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm kind of rambling, Ari, but there's so many thoughts running through my mind about him because, what was lost in terms of a monumental figure, just in terms of just pure platform size. The biggest podcast in conservative media has been holding that spot that number two spot right behind the New York Times Daily Podcast, which is like the biggest political podcast. That he's been holding that number two spot solidly for a while now.
Yeah. Well, I'll say
And
this is that, I'm looking at you right now, a guy who knew him, and I look at in Israel, there's memorials to Charlie popping up everywhere. I don't need to tell you that. And in synagogue this Sabbath here in Seattle, Washington, they couldn't stop talking about him. And it was only good stuff about we lost a friend, we lost an ally, we lost whatever it was. People are absolutely heartbroken. I haven't seen this kind of outpouring of Jewish support, even when some great rabbis die. That's how much people loved him.
it because it's not just about Israel.
Yeah, it's not.
Because I think a lot of it is coming from an understanding that he was on the front lines of the battle for Western civilization, for decency, for being a God-fearing person in a public place, for advocating for traditional values. The Orthodox Jewish community saw him as representing their values in the culture.
Yeah. And I have to say is that when you have these Judeo-Christian values, it's all merging together and you're all working together. Something you and I have worked on is working more with our Christian friends.
Yeah.
And when somebody who gets it is taken from all of us, when it was somebody who lined up with our American values, why was with our Western values, with our Judeo-Christian values, he was such a unique person. I'm not sure we're ever really going to see that again. And the fact that he was so young and what he could have done if he had lived a long life was just, it was such a tragedy that he was stolen from all of us. Rabbi Pesach Wolicki, I'm going to say this again. I'm so happy, so glad, so relieved it was you and Josh Hammer who were talking to him last, because you guys are people I implicitly trust. And I know you had the best ideas of what best for America, what was best for Israel, what was best for Jews, what was best for Christians, what was best for Judeo Christian values, what was best for the West. And I'm just so glad it was you who was in that meeting last with him.
Thank you, Ari. That means a lot.
There will be a lot of people making claims trying to capitalize on Charlie's death, claiming they know what he really meant, what he really said, what he was really saying. Listen to the people who knew him. Listen to the people who were talking with him. Listen to his team and what they say, because what they say is who Charlie Kirk really was. But Charlie Kirk was one of the most videoed people in history. In his short life, he was on Fox News all the time. He was on social media all the time. He was on Turning Point USA channels all the time. If you want to know what the man actually said, go look at his social media. Wishing everybody a Shana Tova. We'll see you all next week for another episode of Keeping the Faith.